This next story is about Jonathan, King Saul's son. It's called Jonathan's Two-Man War. King Saul didn't know what to do. His son Jonathan had conquered a band of Philistines. They had stirred up the whole Philistine army to march against Israel. There were 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and many thousands of soldiers. Saul knew his tiny army could not hope to fight so many. Saul's army knew this too, so most of the soldiers ran away to hide. Some hid in caves, others in cisterns, and still others in holes in the rocky hills. Some even hid in tombs. So many of Saul's soldiers ran away that when he counted his men, he found only 600 left. 600 men against all those thousands and thousands of Philistines with their chariots and horses and iron weapons. It was hopeless. To make matters worse, Saul was not sure that God would help him now. He had foolishly made the sacrifice, a burnt offering, which Samuel should have made. Samuel had even told him that God would not keep Saul as king. Would this be the time? Would the Philistines conquer the land and kill Saul? While Saul sat in camp with his 600 faithful soldiers, worrying about these things, his brave son Jonathan decided to do something about their troubles. Jonathan didn't believe in sitting in camp waiting for the Philistines to make the first move. "Hey, let's go over to that band of Philistines," Jonathan said to his armor-bearer. The armor-bearer thought of the deep gorge near Michmash where the Philistine band was stationed. He and Jonathan would have to climb like mountain goats to get across the deep gorge and up the walls to the Philistine band. But he knew that Jonathan was a very brave young man. He would do anything to please Jonathan. Jonathan slipped quietly from camp with his armor-bearer and left for Michmash. He did not tell his father or the others that he was leaving or where he was going. Saul would probably have stopped him. When the two young men reached the deep gorge, they looked across to the other side. There was the Philistine camp. They could see soldiers walking around. "Let us go across the gorge and attack the camp," Jonathan said to his armor-bearer. "Perhaps the Lord will help us. He can give us the strength to defeat the whole camp if he wills." "I'll go wherever you say," said the armor-bearer. "Good," said Jonathan. "Then let's ask God for a sign. We'll show ourselves to the Philistines when we get up near their camp. If they tell us that they will come down to fight, we'll know that God does not want us to go into their camp. But if they tell us to come up to fight, we'll know that God will give us the victory." Oh, it was a hard, long climb, down into the gorge and then up the other side. Most young men would have been so tired by this time they would not have felt like fighting, but not Jonathan. When Jonathan and his armor-bearer came within shouting distance, they stepped behind some big rocks. Then they shouted so loud that the Philistines thought an army had come after them. "Look," the Philistines laughed. "The Hebrews are coming out of their hiding places." And then the Philistines laughed and laughed. They would show the cowardly Hebrews a thing or two. "Come up here and we'll teach you a lesson," they shouted to Jonathan, his armor-bearer. They thought an army of Hebrews was behind the two young men. "It's a sign from the Lord," Jonathan whispered to his armor-bearer. "The Lord will give us victory." It didn't take long for Jonathan and his armor-bearer to reach the top. They began fighting as soon as they stepped from behind a big rock at the top. The Philistines were surprised that Hebrews could fight so well. They had thought the Hebrews were cowards because many of them had hid. Within a few moments, Jonathan and his armor-bearer had killed 20 Philistines, and then God sent some help. An earthquake began to make the ground tremble. The fighting and the earthquake confused the Philistines, and they began to fight each other. Before long, the whole camp was in confusion. Saul soon heard the news of the Philistine fighting from some of his spies. "Who's missing in our camp?" he asked. The soldiers quickly checked and found who were missing. "Jonathan and his armor-bearer," they answered. "Then bring the ark of God and let's go fight with these two brave men," shouted King Saul. As the small army of Israel prepared for battle, the Philistines fought more and more among themselves. Before long, it seemed certain that the army of the Philistines wouldn't be destroyed. When the Hebrews who had run away heard what was happening, they came out of their hiding places and joined Saul's army. So did the traitors who had gone over to be with the Philistines to keep from being killed. The Philistine soldiers were terrified by now. Not sure what was happening, they began to run for home. Jonathan's two-man army had won a great battle that day, but everyone knew that the Lord had given victory. So this is the ark that God had prepared, and they took it to battle when they wanted to go help Jonathan and his armor-bearer. Have a great day. Talk over the questions with Mom and Dad that are at the bottom.